Alright guys, welcome back to another tier list video. This time we're going to be ranking every single Barbarian King skin in Clash of Clans. So I did put them in order beforehand to make it easier so you guys can keep a track of which skins I will be ranking next, starting with the Gladiator King. Now, I will be ranking these skins based out of my own personal opinion, so keep that in mind. So, first skin is the Gladiator skin, which is actually the first skin to ever be released in the game. So don't expect nothing too crazy for this skin, and for me personally, I think hasn't really lived up to today's standards, so it's gonna go in the bad tier. It doesn't really have anything special going for it other than a special voice. Based on the design, he looks like a bit of a Barbarian warrior. I actually really like the mask, but I do think it doesn't really live up to today's standards, so it goes in the bad category. Next we have the PCK King, which is the second ever Barbarian King skin to be released, and I personally think it's actually a lot better than the Gladiator King. The purple mask and the sword is really cool to see still. His shoes have this pointy kind of feel to it, and I think his armor is also cool looking. So for that reason, he'll go one tier above the Gladiator King at the decent tier. Next we have the Skeleton King, who has a really cool starting animation, as you guys can see right here. He drops his hand and then puts it back in his body, picking up his sword. Based off the design, he already looks like a Skeleton King, which is his name, right? But still, compared to today's standards, I still don't think it goes up above the PCK King. I think this skin and the PCK King are pretty much about the same value, so I'll put him next to him. I think he looks a little better. Next we have the Jolly King. It's also a gold pass skin, just like all the ones previously, but he has a special voice just like the Gladiator King, and he's got a special walking animation. He's got snow floating on top of his head. He's also got a bit of a glowing blue sword. So for a gold pass skin that came out a couple years ago, I would say it's pretty good value. So I'm gonna put it at a decent tier above the Skeleton King. Next we have the Primal King, who I personally think is complete trash. Other than his bear claw, which is pretty much the only cool part about him, everything else is lame. He's got a bone sword who doesn't really fit. I feel like he probably would have fit better with the Skeleton King than anything else. And his face looks very, very stupid. I mean, just look at him. So he's going straight into the trash tier. Up next, we have the Clockwork King, who on an animation standpoint actually has some pretty good value to him. He has a special voice, cool hitting animations, and even sound effects. But I'm not a huge fan of his design, so for me, I'm gonna put him in the bad tier next to the Gladiator King. I'd rather have the Gladiator King than the Clockwork skin. And that moves us up to the Party King, who I still think to this day is actually a pretty good value gold pass skin, even though it came out in 2020. He's got very cool sound effects. He hits the buildings with his guitar, causing a guitar riff, and his outfit is also pretty darn cool. So for that reason, I'm gonna put him at the top of the decent tier. I don't think it's quite on the great skin tier, but he's almost there. Now, speaking of great skins, we got the Champion King next, who even till this day is still one of the best skins to ever be created. Even though it came out in 2020, they really went all out on making this skin. The flaming swords, the Barbarian he spawns, his outfit he's wearing with the crown, it's one of the best skins Clash of Clans has ever made, and for that reason, I'm gonna put it in the top of the great tier skin. Not quite immaculate, just because I do think it isn't as great as some other skins coming, so for that reason, I can't quite put it at immaculate tier. Next, we got the Pirate King skin, which actually has some pretty good animations to him. He's got a pretty good selection animation and a walking animation, because he's missing a foot and a hand. I think for a Pirate King, you can't really ask for more, especially from a gold pass skin. So for that reason, I'm going to put it at the decent tier. I put it below the PCK King. I think the PCK King is better. Up next, we have the Warrior King, who in my opinion is pretty much just the worst version of the Champion King. He doesn't have any custom spawn units. He doesn't look as good, and his animations are not up to par. So he's going to go on the bad category for me. The reason I'm putting on the bad category is because he's a legendary skin, and legendary skins are supposed to be better than gold pass skins. They're supposed to be worth $10, so you're supposed to get your values worth. So he goes in the bad tier. And now we have the Rogue King up next, and I'm not gonna lie, he looks like a nerd, so he's going straight into the trash tier. Now he isn't actually even included in this tier list, so I'm just gonna put a PNG image in there, but just imagine him there right here on the trash category, right next to the Primal King. Actually, I'm gonna put him, I think he's better than the Primal King, but he's still trash, so he belongs right there. I'm not a big fan of his design. or his animations, or his personality. So for that reason, he goes in the trash category. Next, we got the Fierce King, the first ever standard skin to come out. And I'm not gonna lie, I also think it's a trash skin. It's a standard skin worth $4, who I don't think it really lives up to that value. Gold Pass skins are worth about, well, they used to be worth $5. You will get the Gold Pass perks and a Gold Pass skins. So for that reason, the Fierce King goes into the trash tier. Very similar to the Warrior King. If you're paying for just the skin alone, you should be getting your money's worth. And I really don't think the Fierce King complements that. Now, I don't really have anything bad to say about the design, but I don't really have anything good to say about it either. I just think it's a okay design with a bad price tag. So I can't really justify it and put it anything above the trash tier. Next up, we have the Jungle King, who I know a lot of people may not like, but I'm actually a big fan of his mask and his color scheme. His Danish skin, I think, looks pretty good on him, and I like his green gauntlet with the green gem. I think his green gems all around his body look pretty darn cool, so I'm gonna put him in a decent tier next to the Party King. And now we have one of my personal favorite skins, the Big King, who's got amazing sound effects, amazing spawn units, really badass selection animation, and I just love the way he kicks buildings with his leg. And I'm just a big fan of purple overall, and I think his colors match really well. So he's another great skin. I don't think he's quite on the Champion King level, but he's still on the same tier as him. And now we have another one of my favorite skins. We got the Golden King, who's my personal favorite Gold Pass skin ever. I mean, just look at him. He's huge. He's got a huge sword, huge gauntlet, and that side piece of armor he's wearing on his shoulder looks so badass that I just have to put him at the great category. This is the best Gold Pass skin that I've ever released till this date. And now that spawn units aren't as worth it as they were before because of equipment, he's even in better value than ever before. So I think he deserves a spot in the great category. Next up is the Ice King, who's also a legendary skin, who at face value has all the legendary worth. You get custom spawn units, unique special effects, and you get a pretty cool design to come with it. So for those reasons, I think he belongs in the top of the decent tier. Not quite good enough to be on the great tier, but he definitely deserves a spot on top of the decent category. And now we have lots of people's favorite king skin, which is the Lunar King. I know a lot of people who love his animations. When he hits buildings, he leaves a tiger mark behind. And with the epic gauntlet, he leaves even bigger ones behind. I don't think he's quite immaculate tier. And for me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of his design. So I'm going to put him next to the Golden King. Up next is the Shadow King, which I'm going to be completely honest, I think is another trash skin. I really don't think this fits the set at all, the Shadow set, because his clothes are way too bright. I think his mask looks stupid on him. It's way too tight on him. And I understand he's supposed to be this executioner, but he really doesn't look any way threatening as an executioner is supposed to look like. He looks lame. And for that reason, he goes straight into the trash category. There's like the next skin that's up. I really don't like this skin either. It's a Summer King skin, who I really don't think is worth the legendary status. I'm not a big fan of his design or his personality. I think his spawn units are not that good either. And he really just looks like a old man trying to fit in with the youngsters. So for that reason, he's going into the bad category. I don't think it's a trash skin, but similar to the Warrior King skin, I don't think it's really worth the $10 price tag. Up next is the Pixel King skin, who has some pretty cool visual effects and sound effects especially, but it's pretty much just the Barbarian King skin pixelated. So for that reason, I can't really put it in the great category or the bad category, so I'm just going to put it right here in the middle of the decent category. At the end of the day, if you did get this skin for free, then it's really just a decent skin. It's not bad, it's not great, but there's really nothing wrong with it for me to put it anything below decent, and I don't think there's anything too good about it or particular about it for me to put it in the great tier either. So I think it belongs perfectly there in the decent tier. And now we have another trash skin in my opinion. It's the Clash Fest King, who I personally just think looks like a narcissistic prick by the way he flexes and he over exaggerates his facial expressions. He flexes as if he's some kind of king when he's really just looks like a dork. So I'm gonna put him in the trash category. Now moving on from the trash category, we have the first ever immaculate skin. When I first saw these skins come to the game, I knew that they were going to be one of the best skins to ever come. I'm a huge fan of the
constant visual effects that he has around his body, his sword, and his gauntlet. The purple cape with the golden shoulder plate and white hair really matches well. I love his swinging animations and his custom spawn units as well. The way he swings his sword by jumping all the way up to the air and dropping just a hammer, he easily gets into the Immaculate tier. And now we have another Gold Pass skin, the Beast King, who is very similar to the Lunar New Year's King, but instead of a tiger, he's a beast. Now, it is a Gold Pass skin, so don't expect as much value as the Lunar King set, but I still think it's a pretty decent skin. I'll put him at the middle of the Ice King and the Party King's skin. He's got some pretty good running animation, especially with the epic gauntlet. And the way he just runs around base when he's in Beast King form just looks great. So I think he deserves a spot right on top of the decent tier. And to another legendary skin, we have the Painter King, which I'm gonna be completely honest, aside from his spawn units that look like Bob Ross, I'm not a big fan of his design. I think I know they made him as a traditional painter, but I'm more a fan of cool looking skins running around the battlefield instead of people who like to make art in their spare time. So I'm gonna put him in the bad category. If your best part about the skin is your spawn units, I really don't think it's a good skin to begin with. So for that reason, I think he belongs right on the bad category. Up next, we got the Dark Ages King, which is a Gold Pass King. And this one's gonna be quick and to the point. I think he's just a decent skin. I don't think he's very similar to the Pixel King set, where I don't think there's really anything wrong with him. He looks like a knight, but I don't really think there's anything good about him either. I think he fits this set perfectly, but he is just at the end of the day a Gold Pass King, so don't expect too much from him. And finally, we have another Immaculate skin joining the team. We got the Leag King set, who not only has an amazing design, but also a crazy show-off potential. Being worth 2,000 League medals, not a lot of people have this skin because not a lot of people are willing to save up 2,000 League King medals when it could take them a whole year to even get to that point, especially if you're a Lord Town Hall. But even aside from that, just look at him. He's like a gold Spartan King skin set that's just so badass. And now I know he might not have best special effects, but I'm more of a design guy because I don't even play with sound effects, but I do value them still to an extent, just not as much as the design. These custom spawn units are a bit lackluster. They're not as cool as like the Champion King, but now with the introduction of equipment, spawn units aren't as worth as they were before equipment was introduced. So I think the Leag King definitely deserves the Immaculate tier. Dropping from Grace from Immaculate, we have the Goblin King set, or the Goblin King skin, who's pretty much just the opposite of the Leag King skin. He's extremely different from him, and not in a good way. He's very energetic. I'm just not a personal fan of goblins in general, so I'm gonna put him in the bad category. And up next, we have another of my personal favorites, King skins, the Future King, who's got some pretty cool animations, selection animation, swinging animation, his constant electric sword, and his pink goggles with his purple cape. He's very similar to the Magic King in that sense, but I think he's a step below the Magic King. I don't think he's as cool as him, so I think I'm gonna put him in the great category, right next to the Big King. I'd rather have the Big King than him, but he's still pretty good value. And now at chess pieces next, we have the Chess King, who's actually got some pretty cool selection animation. He spins around with his sword and swings his cape around. The way they move around the battlefield, instead of walking, they glide across it. But for me personally, I'm a big fan of it, so I'm gonna just put it right here on the decent tier category. And now we have the Ghost King, who I know are a lot of people's favorites because of his cool animations and scary Halloween theme. Now, I'm not quite to that extent ecstatic about the Ghost King, but I do think he belongs in the great category. For a legendary King skin, he's worth the value. He's got great animations. He also kind of glides or kind of floats above, kind of like the Chess King, but a little better. And the way he swings his swords is not a natural way. He kind of throws the sword kind of like a scythe and then brings it back to him. So I think he belongs in the great King category. Now we have another legendary skin, the Gingerbread King. I think this is the first ever King skin from an event pass. I think it's the only one so far as well. And I think he's very similar to the Pixel King, in my opinion. I don't really hate anything about him, but I'm not really a fan of anything either. If I were to choose something from him, I would say he is walking animation, and the sprinkles, or I guess confetti, he drops every time he walks around the battlefield. Looks pretty darn cool. So I will put him above the Pixel King, but not quite above the Dark Ages King. I'm not the hugest of fans of like this type of cutie in between skins, so I'm just gonna put them in a decent category. I don't think they're bad in sets, but I really don't think they're great either. And up next is pretty much just the better version of the Fierce King. We got the King of the North, which is actually the first King skin to ever have the word King before the skin name. And I think it's pretty much the Fierce King skin, but just better. It's a gold pass skin, so you get a lot more value. You get the perks of a gold pass plus the skin. His axe glows unlike the Fierce King. And I also think he's got a better design and personality than the Fierce King. Better animations, and he fits perfectly with the Queen of the North. So for that reason, I'm going to put him on the distant category right above the Party King. And now we have one of the more recent King skin sets to be one of my personal favorites, who's going straight into the Immaculate tier. He looks like a dragon, and the barbarians he spawns are the best barbarians to ever be spawned in the game. He's got great animations, great sound effects. The way he flies around the battlefield, it's very similar to the Chess and the Ghost King skin, where they don't just walk around, but they all kind of float around the battlefield. Now, I don't think he's better than the Leag or the Magic. Well, the Magic is actually kind of close between both of them, but he's not better than Leag. I think the Leag's probably the best in the Immaculate tier list, but him and the Magic are around the same value. They're both Immaculate skin sets, which just shows how good the Magic skin sets was when it first came out with Town Hall 15. I think his color scheme for the Dragon King is also really good, so he easily gets into the Immaculate tier. And now we have another similar King skin to the Warrior King, which is the Astronaut King, who's also a legendary skin, but with no custom spawn units. And you guys already know how I feel about that, so I'm going to put him in the decent tier, right below the Chess King. Not quite as good as the Chess King, but I'm still a huge fan of the effects he has and the way he jumps on the battlefield. And now for our last King skin is the Egypt skin, which is the latest skin to be introduced to Clash of Clans as of April 2024. Now, for a legendary skin, I'm actually going to put this in the bad tier. I really don't think it's worth the value of a legendary skin. Actually, when I first saw the leaks of the skin, I thought it was going to be the gold pass skin. Now, for the constant sand effect around him, that's pretty much the only thing he's got going for him. He doesn't have any spawn units. His animations are lame. In my opinion, he's the worst part of the Egyptian skin set, and for that reason he's going to the bad category. I don't think he's trash, because I do think he's better than the skins below him. I also think he's better definitely than the Goblin King, so I'm gonna put him right there. You know what, I'll put him above the Painter and the Summer King, but yeah, I'd rather have the Warrior. Speaking of the Warrior, I think I'd rather have him over the Clockwork. And that'll be all. If you agree with me or disagree with me, leave it down in the comments below where I got things wrong, where I got things right. Maybe I put a King skin too high, or maybe I put it too low. But anyways, if you enjoyed, consider subscribing for more Clash of Clans content. And bye-bye.